Yes, good morning all. I hope all of you are well and awake.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Um, okay, last class probably we ended with the explanation of socket programming using TCP. Okay, and even I had given an assignment to you for trying up. Okay, have you tried it? Anyone
Yes,
can
ma'am.
comment? Okay, any doubt in that? Any doubt?
No doubts, ma'am.
No doubts. Okay. Uh, Today I'll be showing you one simple program using UDP. What you can do is you can very well alter the TCP program using UDP. Okay. So I'll just show you one simple example and then I will be covering a bit of file streams. Okay. File input stream, file output stream. Only some one or two examples I'll show you. Then from the next class, we will be beginning with what is called as RMI, remote method invocation. I think probably it will take 2 days for me to cover up that. Then we will have servlets and JSP. Okay. Probably servlet and JSP will be helping you in your mini project. Okay. So if you want me to cover servlets and JSP first, please let me know. Uh, like I can postpone RMI for a week and then come back and take RMI separately. Okay. Anyways, they are not so much connected. So let me know from your end. From the next class, should I start with JSP servlets or should I go ahead with the RMI, the remote method invocation? That it also comes under networking. Okay. Today's task for you, this is a simple example. You can understand it very easily. Today's task for you is combination of network and database. Okay, I'll just open this program for you, my client and my server, which I had explained in the previous class. Now what I want the client and server to be implemented in this manner. Client asks from the user, client asks from the user the different data that are required to be stored in the table, say book info. Okay. Probably when I was explaining database connectivity, I did take book DB as an example, and in that there is a table called book info. Okay. So now what I want the procedure of client server to be like this. Please listen to it very carefully. I want client side to read from the user. It means from the keyboard I have to enter the book ID, title of the book, who is the author, edition and publisher. Okay. 5 things it has to read from the user, and those data have to be sent to the server. Read, send. Okay. And the server has to receive all the data in various variables. Using those variables, it has to store those data into the database. It has to update. It means server has to go through insert query. It has to go through insert query. Okay. So it has to insert all those data into the table, and after insertion, the server will send back a message to the client, the data stored in the database. I hope you are getting what I am trying to tell. Okay. So listen to it again. Client reads from the user the different data that are required, sends all those one by one. It means what? You are writing d outer dot write UTF off. What data you have read? That. Not within double quotes. You are passing the variable. Okay. So the variable, whatever value it contains, that gets sent to the server. Server receives it one by one. It means you are doing D out, D out for 4 or 5 times. Then there read UTF you are calling 4 or 5 times, the number of times you are passing the data from the client to the server. Then server receives all those and calls insert query on the database. Calls insert query on the database. So the data gets stored onto the database in the table of the database. Then server replies to the client after it has been inserted successfully. It sends back to the client the data stored into the database or data stored in the repository. Client receives that message and then what it does, it tries to confirm it. It tries to confirm it whether the data is already inserted or not. How it does? It does the calling of the query select star from. Select star from. So you have 2 days time for that. Okay. In these 2 days, before Thursday's class, this needs to be implemented and I'll be giving you one link in the Google Classroom where you are uploading this program along with the output. I hope I'm clear with the kind of the things that are required. Yes or no, comment it in the chat. Then I will proceed ahead. If you have any doubt, you can ask me now only. You have understood. Okay, Parmeet has said yes. What about others? Yes. Okay. Yes. So you are having 2 days of time. This is a connectivity between two different streams. Okay. One is database connectivity and another is networking. I'm combining both of them into one application. Okay. So once you are thorough with this, whatever JSP and servlets I'm talking, there it becomes much easier to work out. Okay. This is what is important in JSP and servlet. That's why I want you to do it here so that their addition and deletion of few things are there. If you do that, JSP will work out very nicely. Okay. You just try it out. If it doesn't come, please let me know before the Thursday's class. I hope you will do that. Okay. So next is, before I proceed, as we had done in the data structures, we had done one group, okay, and group wise there was an activity. Group wise there was an activity for all of you, correct? So similarly, this time also I'm trying to float one such group activity, which I call it as hackathon for Java programming. Okay, let me just stop sharing for a while and unlock the meeting and then come back. Okay, I wanted to call it as hackathon in Java. Okay, there I want to make sure that within a stipulated time of 4 hours, you are supposed to use any kind of thing that you have learned. Okay, that you have learned. You have to use any kind of the things that you have learned. You can use internet, you can use book, however you want to have. Okay, within the 4 hours of stipulated time that is given to you, you are supposed to implement one application that is given on that day at the start of the hackathon. Okay, so immediately you are supposed to start coding on that, and there will be duration. Between that time only you are supposed to upload the thing that you have done. Okay, whether this is clear for you. And this will be done after third IA. After third IA. Are you able to listen to me properly? So for both the group activity as well as the hackathon, I require group formation first of all. Okay. See guys, you are away from each other. I know it. 100% correct. You are away from each other. But even then, Virtually, you have to have a communication among yourselves and do the things parallelly. Okay, so this is a great learning from your side. I hope you will enjoy it. So, two things you'll be doing. One, the group activity, which I call it as give the assignment to you in the Google Classroom. You can take 1 week of time and submit the assignment within that 1 week. Okay, but hackathon, whatever I'm speaking, that is at that point in time, you are supposed to do it parallelly. Okay, and within the time duration that is given, you are supposed to complete as much as possible. It may include multiple tasks. Okay, so be prepared for all of those, and soon after this class, probably by tomorrow. Okay, today I am a bit busy. You should know that there is a national workshop going on in the college. That's why I cancelled my class on Saturday also. Today also 9 o'clock there is inauguration function. It is virtual workshop. It's for faculty, not for you. So due to that reason, most of the faculty members are busy this week. And so today, you just pardon me. Tomorrow morning, I'll be sharing one Google Sheet to you where you are supposed to edit your group members. So by tomorrow, you should be ready with your group members. Okay. Per group, there is a need of 4 or 5 maximum. Okay, I prefer 5 members maximum in a group. Okay, so this group holds good for the group activity as well as the hackathon. So please make sure that you are making the group with proper understanding among each other. Okay, I hope so you have understood my uh, intention for doing this. Okay, let's go ahead. So now uh, instead of TCP, can I have UDP implemented? Definitely you can have. Okay. Compared to TCP, UDP is much easier because TCP requires first you have to attach to the client and server, then try sending the data or receiving the data. Unlike TCP, UDP doesn't bother about the connection. It just thinks that, look, I am available at this point. Look, I am available at this point. Whatever you want to send, you send it to me, I will receive it. So I call them as sender and the receiver. Okay. So receiver, what it requires on its side, receiver always requires a buffer. See, understand this, the overall working first, then you map it to the program, then it will be much convenient for you. So what a receiver requires? Receiver definitely requires a buffer because the data that it receives has to be stored into the buffer, and it requires a function called as receive. On what? On what? It has to receive the data on the socket which is common for both client and server. Okay, so when I'm trying to have a socket involved for the network connectivity, whenever datagram socket is there, whenever socket is there in UDP, there is a call for a constructor called as datagram socket. Okay, we had in TCP server socket and socket. Server socket was called on server, socket was called on client. But here when I take up the receiver and the sender, I have on the both sides datagram socket. No change at all. Okay, I have on the both sides the datagram socket. There is no difference at all. Okay, but when I am trying to send the data, only then I require what is called as INET address. Local host we used to give where we used to give? We used to give on the client side. Similarly, in the sender side, whoever is sending the data, that person has to bother about INET address. Okay, so both of them, both the client as well as the server, will call the datagram socket and create a socket on that side. Who requires the socket number? Okay, the datagram socket on the sender side is not bothered about the kind of the socket number that it is creating. Okay, but when it is trying to send the packet, look at the difference. When it is trying to create the socket, it is not bothered about the the socket number. But when it is trying to send the data, at that time, on what socket number I have to send, that number you have to pass. So datagram socket and datagram packet are the two important things in UDP. We had so many things in TCP, right? That got crumped up into only two things. Okay, I would tell like this. Datagram socket is there, then there is a sending, then there is a datagram packet. Okay, on one end. On the other hand, there is a datagram socket and there is receive. As simple as that. Three things on one end, two things on other end. So you can write it down like this. Datagram socket on both ends. Say suppose A and B are the two ends. Both of them will call datagram socket. Okay. Then the person who is sending that would require the INET address. What about others? It doesn't require the INET address because its task is only to receive. Then it requires the other part, A, who is sending, that requires before sending to what port number, to what socket number I have to send. That is decided in datagram packet. Then it has to call send. Okay, it has to call send. What about the other side? On the other side, it would have created a datagram socket and would have connected at 3000. Okay, at 3000. Then along with that, it would require a buffer to store the data that is being sent from A. So datagram packet on the sender side requires what? INET address and the port number on which the communication is happening. What about the other end who is receiving? Receiver would require datagram packet with the buffer. It doesn't bother about INET address. It doesn't bother about the socket number because socket number would have been taken care at datagram socket only. Then the second part is nothing but what is the size of the data, burst of the data that is coming in at a time. Burst of data that is coming in at a time. Okay. Then the B part also requires what is called as receive. It also requires what is called as receive. So on the sender would require send, receiver would require receive. Okay. Accordingly, we will just go through the program. So, okay. So look at this. We have created a datagram socket. This you assume that sender A. Okay. We have created a datagram socket and I have called INET address for the local host. 127.0.0.1 is nothing but local host. No change at all. Even if you write in double quotes local host, it means the same. Okay. So the IP address for local host is 127.0.0.1. It indicates local host by name only. Okay. So when I tell inet address dot get by name, it returns me local host only. Then datagram packet, it has called a datagram, created a datagram packet and get bytes. What is this get bytes? Get bytes is the string that I have stored. Okay, that needs to be converted into bytes because on the receiver side, what is the size that I have given? 1024 bytes at max it can receive in one burst. Okay, so it needs to be converted into bytes. That's why the string that I have stored that I'm passing to the receiver, that needs to be converted into bytes. How I am doing that? Call get bytes on the string that you want to pass. Then the datagram packet also requires string.length. Why this string.length is required? Can anybody comment on this? Can anybody comment on this? Why this length is required? Yes, anyone?
Ma'am, to receive the that segment, that input, it is required, ma'am. String dot length.
Ankit, probably you have heard about fragmentation in the network.
Yes,
Say
ma'am.
suppose probably you might have come across this kind of problems. There is a PDU of 1000 bytes, but the channel capacity is 576 bytes. So there will be a fragmentation. To enable the fragmentation, this is required. Okay, what is the length of
Yes,
the
ma'am.
string with which it is getting passed? So the length decides, do I need to enable on the receiver end the fragmentation or not? Okay, the channel, the capacity, receiving capacity is 1024. Whether the coming in data is crossing that limit, if so, I have to enable that fragmentation. Only for that reason, this parameter is required. Okay, I hope this is clear for you. Now the third parameter, IP, it is nothing but the local host that I have stored, the name of the INET address. Then on what port number I need to pass this message. So this number and on the receiver, whatever that is supplied, both should match. Otherwise, the data may reach at some other socket number at which some other server is available. Okay. Now what happens? I will call send using the socket, object of socket, and try to send what? The data packet. You have to understand it like this. I'm trying to send the datagram packet. I'm trying to send the datagram packet using what? The socket. That's why datagram socket dot send of datagram packet. This is how you have to understand it. Okay, so what all things have happened on the sender side? I never call it as a client and server in UDP. I usually call it as sender and receiver. Okay, sender, on the sender side, what happens? Sender creates a datagram socket, okay, and creates a datagram packet having the bytes of data that needs to be sent as the first parameter. Second parameter, what is the length of the data that is going in? Third parameter, on what IP address I'm trying to send. Okay, suppose your sender and receiver are at are differently available, two different hosts. If they are there, as I mentioned in TCP, you can very well pass what? You can very well pass the IP address of the receiver. Since both sender and receiver are happening on the same machine, the IP address given is localhost IP address. Okay, then the third parameter is on the local host which you are trying to send, and fourth parameter talks about the socket which gets created on the receiver end. The same number you have to pass. Then I will call send function on this datagram packet using datagram socket. Okay, it's the most simplest program that I have taken. On the receiver end, what receiver has to do? It has to create the socket, and that socket is ready to receive the data. Okay, so how do you create the socket? By using datagram socket. Then I would require a data packet receiving with a buffer size of 1024. Okay, with a buffer of any size. So that buffer is the first parameter for datagram packet. So datagram packet acting in two different ways. First way is for the sender, second way is for the receiver. Similarly, the datagram socket for the sender, it acts differently without any parameters. But datagram socket for receiver is acting with one parameter which talks about the socket number. Okay, then this indicates what is the amount of data that gets in at one burst. Then receiver has created the datagram socket and it has called datagram packet using a buffer and with the maximum capacity of 1024 bytes. Then what it has to do? I'm ready to receive the data. So what it has to do? It has to call the receive function on this datagram packet using the datagram socket. Are you all okay with this? Are you all okay with this? Next thing
Yes, ma'am.
is you have received the data in what manner? You have received the data in terms of bytes. You have to combine them into a relevant data. How do you do that? You will do that by using this. You are doing that by using this. What is that? Whatever that you pass for the string constructor, the first parameter it talks about, this is a new thing that you are encountering. Please pay attention to this. What I have done, instead of creating string str equal to new string of hello, what I have done, string of dp.getData. What is this dp.getData? What dp contains? dp would contain buffer which has stored the data in it. Now, from the buffer, I have to extract the data. From the buffer, I have to extract the data. And that data has to be converted into string format. Okay, so definitely it is not at all issue with these two parameters. Okay, it is not at all an issue with these two parameters. It talks about conversion of bytes into string format. Conversion of byte data into string format. Multiple bytes combined together to form a string format, and that string you are printing. You just assume, can you write dp dot get data here? I'll remove this. And what I will do now, I'll just comment this. What dp.getData will give me? It will give me in terms of bytes the same data that is stored. What I have done in this line of code, simply converted the bytes into string format. The format is altering. It is not the data. The data remains same, no change at all. Are you all getting this? Or any doubt you have? So who has to run first among the client and the server? Among the receiver and the sender? Who has to run first?
Client, ma'am.
Client. Client over here, it is nothing but receiver.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's suppose I will start the sender. Okay, just give the attention to the running of the code. What has happened? It has started, but it has terminated. Why it has to terminate? Sender doesn't know where it has to send the data. You just pay attention to this line. Okay, it has terminated. Sender has started, but it is not knowing where should it send the data. So who has to start first? Obviously, the first thing that needs to start is the receiver. Once the socket is fixed, look at this. D receiver is active now. Okay, in this console you can just understand, previously it was showing terminated, but now it is showing D receiver. Now I will switch this tab and try running the sender. Have a look at the kind of the output that you are getting. What is that you have typed? You have sent welcome Java, but what it is trying to receive? It is trying to print that in the byte format. It is encapsulated. So that needs to be modified into string format. That's why this line of code. I will just uncomment this. Okay, I'll just uncomment this and let me write it as the string format. I'll save it. Now I will start it again. D receiver is running. Then D sender, I will run it. Welcome Java. Are you getting the difference between the two?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I'll stop this. Probably last time client server I didn't show you how to run the code. Okay, I'm so sorry for that. Let me run the server first. Okay, now I'll come back to client. I'll run the client. Yes. Now when I try to close this console, look at this. This console, I have opened two consoles. If you can make out, one acting as client, another acting as server. Please note it down. You have to run two parallel consoles. How to do that? Probably you will be knowing about it. Okay, let me stop it. Let me stop this also. I have added two consoles here. new console view. You can just see there is an option at the bottom of this console window. There is an option called as new console view. You can add two consoles parallelly. One console is for client and another console is for server. This is how you have to run these codes. I hope I'm clear with this. Please let me know from your end.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So can you try out the program which I was talking about for today? Database as well as a TCP connection. Okay, let me just write. Yes, I'll just show you one program for input stream and output stream. Okay, what is this doing? I have a file called input.txt and I have created a file called output.txt. Let me just check. Okay, it's over here, input.txt. Now what I want the thing that is available in input.txt to be written in output.txt. So I have cleared output.txt now. I'll just go back to this file which is talking about copying the content of one file into another file. Okay, let me just run this code. Okay, it has done it, and let me just refresh it. It has copied the content. So whether you are knowing file streams or don't know file streams, let me know from your end before I start covering this. Let me know from your end whether you are knowing file streams. No comments from your end?
Don't know, ma'am.
Don't know. Okay. Why files are required? Can anybody tell why files are required?
Ma'am, in general term, we can say to store the data.
Okay.
Or related.
Multiple data at a time, a burst of data is available. I want to have so much of data stored at one place, and I can very easily open or close at any point in time. I can edit it any point in time. For that reason, this file concept is very much required. Okay, let me just go through one simple example of file which talks about copying one file into another file. Okay. You have seen in the previous class, we were talking about input stream and output stream. Okay. When I talked about input stream, it is nothing but the data that can be sent. Okay, that can be sent to something. So or I can tell I'm so sorry for that. When I'm talking about input stream, I'll talk about reading the data. I'll talk about reading only, nothing else other than that. When I talk about output stream, I'm trying to write something on it. Okay, so any stream, be it input or output, can be implemented in multiple ways. I could tell like this. There is something called as simple input stream, simple output stream. Input stream, output stream are nothing but pipes, two pipes available. So through which the data gets flowing in. When I tell there are two kinds of streams available. Two kinds of streams when I talk about, I call it as character stream, call it as byte stream. When I call it as character stream, the data flows in the stream character by character, one character at a time. When I call about byte streaming, one byte at a time the data will flow. Okay, so in both of these cases, the stream can be either in the reading format or in the writing format. The source or the person who is initiating the stream will have to decide the data that is coming in. Do I need to read only that, or do I need to have the editing done to that? According to that, the type of the stream gets decided. When I talk about only reading of the data, I call it as input stream. Whenever there is writing as well, I call it as output stream. Okay. So you have buffered reader, you have buffered writer, you have buffered input stream, buffered output stream. What is the meaning of that buffered? Any input stream at both the ends is associated with a buffer. It means what? There is a burst of data coming in. The data that comes in will first reside in the buffer, then it goes to the person who is requiring that particular data. So gets stored into the buffer. That most preferred is buffered reader, buffered writer. Reason for that? Anytime you can fetch it from the buffer. Anytime. Okay. There is one extra edge over this buffered reader called as file, because buffer has a limitation. If I tell buffer can have 65,535 bytes, so beyond 65,535, it cannot store it. It shows that buffer is overflowing. There is somebody who is ahead of all these. It means the receiver or the sender will not have that end limit. However number of bytes you want to send, you can send. However number of bytes you want to store, you can store. That is done by a special streaming capacity called as file streams. File stream is above everybody. That's why I have taken this example. See, buffer, when I tell, there's a limitation of buffer. Simple reader, simple writer, there is a limitation on number of characters that you are sending. But when I tell there is a huge amount of data, I don't know how much it comes at that time, then I will prefer a streaming called as file stream. File streams can be of two categories, similar to other things. Either it can be file input stream or it can be file output stream. The file which is trying to have the data available with it, okay, it is opened only to read. That file, it is opened only to read. Guys, you might have come across fopen, fread, fwrite, okay, fscanf, fprintf in C programming. Similar to that, when I write fread, it is nothing but file is opened in the read mode, or file is open only to read the data. So when you try to tell that I'm doing fread, I call it as file input stream. This file input stream would require a parameter that talks about the source. What is the source I'm talking about? The file from where the data needs to be read. Similarly, when I open the file to write something, who is the file who is getting opened in the write mode? That I need to pass as a parameter to what is called as file output stream. When I tell file input stream, it talks about the data that is going in from what source. The source of the data is given as a parameter for input stream. For file output stream, the data that has come in has to be written somewhere. The destination is given as a parameter to output stream. So obviously, both of them would require a handler, and the handler in any object-oriented programming is nothing but the object. So I have created two objects, one file input stream space in. Initially, I have given it as null. It means that in is not pointing anywhere. Similarly, I have created file output stream out. Then this in I have attached to input.txt, out I have attached to output.txt. So what it does, takes the data, reads the data from input file, writes into the output file. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. When I'm trying to take the data, read the data from input file, what is the handler that I'm using? In. What is the object that is associated with read? In. And when I'm trying to write the data into some other file, which is output.txt, out.write I will do. Okay, when I'm writing the data into the output file, When I'm trying to write the data into the output file, what is the object that I'm using? Out. And who is this out? Out is nothing but output streaming object. Are you all getting this line, whatever I have explained? Please let me know from your end.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now what I will do, I have created these things up to this line, it is okay. Now what I will do, when I'm trying to read or write, I will read or write until the end of file. Until end of file. Of what? Of the source. Until the end of file of the source. If I compare, if I try to check for the end of file of the destination, there is no requirement at all. Why? Output file is its task is just to receive as long as it is trying to receive it from the input. So I need to check for end of file of input. Okay. So what I will do, I will try doing it by extracting the data and checking against -1. What is this -1? -1 is nothing but EOF, end of file. Okay. So when I call in.read, has it encountered an end of file? What is that character? -1 indicates the end of file. And since -1 is an integer, I call this comparison as int c. Only for that reason. Otherwise, writing it happens according to the bytes only. Okay. Then in.read, it has not encountered -1. Until that time, what I will do? Out.write. So in would have extracted the data and sent into the stream the data until -1 has encountered. It just goes on sending the data from one end. What out has to do? Extract the data, write it into the file. Who is the file who is receiving output.txt and who holds the gateway for that? Out. So read and write will act as reading purpose or writing purpose. Read will always be with input stream. Write will always be with output stream. Any doubt at this point? This is the simplest program that has been written from my side. Okay. I hope there are no doubts. I'm left out with
Excuse me,
exactly.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, here in the out dot right of C, here
Yeah.
are you writing integer or is it meaning like is it something else?
See,
Out dot
whenever
right
it
of
has
C.
come. Yep.
C means integer, right? That's why I'm asking.
Correct.
Is it
C
writing
is
integer or what?
see 1 minute. C would have got -1. C would have got -1 only when it has reached the dead end of the input file. Okay. Only at that point -1 would be there. Whatever you are writing, you are simply writing as it is. Don't bother about the data type of the data that is coming in at this point. Varshini.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. This is a simple thing. Take, write. Don't bother about the data type. Okay. Now, when I take, I think I'm left out with only 2 or 3 minutes of time. Uh, as much as possible, I will cover. I will otherwise postpone it to next class because 9 o'clock I have to go for the function. Okay. Next. So what I have done at this point, let me take up another simple example. At any point in time, have you come across tokenizer? Tokens you have heard about?
Yes, ma'am. We have heard
Yes.
in
What is a
compiler.
token? Why do I require tokens?
Ma'am, tokens generally our compiler needs the token, ma'am. Like this to identify like what are the signs and all those things. Like let's suppose x equal to y, ma'am.
Hmm.
So x and y are the identifiers, and there are three tokens, ma'am.
There are 3 tokens.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
ID1
Yes.
equal and ID2.
Okay. Better I will take up these things in the next class itself. Okay. Um, So we will end for now. I hope your TCP you have understood, UDP you have understood, you have understood the introduction to file streams, okay? And please try doing the program that I have explained, okay? I'll be sharing the link for that by tomorrow, okay? I'll take up this continuation of this on Thursday. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.